Folks, this is Andy Reese with Department on Disability Services. Welcome to our Friday afternoon forum. Nice to see everyone again. And I want to thank Winslow for stepping in for the last 4 weeks while I was not able to be here. First up, as always, I'm going to share my screen and we will walk through our data as of today. So quite fortunately, we still are at 429 people who have tested positive for coronavirus. There have been no positive results since early May amongst the people that we support. And so that breakdown, same as every other week for the last several, in host homes, we have had 9 people test positive for coronavirus. In intermediate care facilities, 114. In mental health facilities, there was 1 person. In natural homes, 56 people. In nursing homes, 2 people. In out-of-state placements, 4. Residential habilitation, 37. And supported living, 206. And so by percentage in our different placement types, within intermediate care facilities, there's been about 38% of the people who have tested positive for coronavirus. That 114 people, amongst them, there have been 27 deaths, but only 13 of those deaths have been confirmed as COVID deaths. That represents 11.4% of the people with COVID in ICFs who have subsequently died from a confirmed COVID death. In natural homes, the 56 people represent about 6% of people in natural homes that we support. Amongst those, there have been 5 deaths, and all 5 have been confirmed as COVID deaths, representing about 9% of people who contracted COVID in natural homes who have died. In residential habilitation, the 37 people who've contracted COVID represent about 34% of people in residential habilitation placements. Of those, there have been 3 deaths, but only 2 were confirmed as COVID deaths, which represents about 5.4% of people with COVID in residential habilitation. In supported living, the 206 people who've contracted COVID represent about 22% of people in supported living who've contracted COVID. And amongst those, there have been 22 deaths, 15 of which have been confirmed as COVID-related deaths, which represents about 7.3%. And so overall in DDA, the 429 people who've contracted COVID represent about 18% of the people. And there have been 60 deaths, of which to date 37 have been confirmed as COVID deaths, which represents about 8.6% of people with COVID supported by DDA who have died from a confirmed COVID death. As I indicated, amongst the placements, ICF, residential habilitation, supported living, and natural home, in the month of August so far, there have been no COVID, no one has contracted COVID. And of course, there have been no people who have required hospitalization. So 60 people who have been diagnosed with COVID have subsequently died. To date, 16 of those are confirmed as not COVID related, and we are still awaiting confirmation from OCME on 7 additionals, which works out to 37 people who have confirmed COVID deaths. Our last confirmed COVID death was in March. Amongst provider staff, We have had 706 provider staff who have tested positive for COVID. 52 of these folks worked for more than one provider, and we have had 10 staff who have died from COVID. Vaccinations to date, as of Thursday, people supported by DDA, we're at 76% of the people supported by DDA who have been vaccinated, who have received at least one vaccine. In host homes, that's 77%. In ICFs, it is 97%. In natural homes, we're at 59%. Residential habilitation is at 96%. And supported living is at 84%. The most recent update for staff that we have is from July 30th. So we should be getting an update that should be posted very soon. But the current report, the most current report I have indicates 63%. DDS staff, oh, okay, it says 73%. And actually, I received an update yesterday that I should have put here. We're now at 74%. As we talk about vaccination, I expect that people are aware that the mayor issued an order this week that applied. I mean, it was very specifically, and the rules are published for DC government employees, requiring that by September 19th, all DC government employees be vaccinated for COVID-19 with certain exemptions, including an exemption for health reasons, for religious reasons, or if people do not get vaccinated, they can test weekly and provide documentation weekly that they have tested negative for coronavirus. The other significant aspect of the mayor's order is that it also includes a requirement that all district government contractors and grantees who provide goods or perform services in person in District of Columbia facilities or work sites, or who have in-person contact with other persons in order to complete the work under their contract or grant, be either fully vaccinated or meet one of the district government exemptions for vaccination. I will say we are in discussion with the other agencies particularly within the Department of the Health and Human Services cluster, about some of the specifics of exactly what this means to ensure that these, and as well as the Office of Contracts and Procurement, to make sure that these provisions are implemented consistently across the district. So as we have some more information, we will provide it. Right now, specifically how that will be implemented, we don't have that specific guidance yet, but we will very soon. As I say, we're working with other district agencies in order to make sure that we are all implementing this consistently. Someone is asking if they can have a link for the new mayor's order. I'm pretty certain that the mayor's order is on the coronavirus website. But I'll look. The other significant provision, or one that did kind of jump out to me, because I know that it has been an issue that there's been some discussion with some of our providers about, is given that there is this requirement of people being vaccinated, and that requirement includes exemptions for health reasons, There is a provision in the mayor's order that says employees, contractors, grantees, colleagues, constituents are not entitled to know whether a person is at work because they've been certified fully vaccinated or because they've received an exemption. So we could have a person who has a health reason for not being able to to get the vaccine, and that person will continue to come to work as long as they are testing weekly, and neither that person nor the agency would disclose that, because that would be disclosing sort of health information about that person potentially. And so just so people are aware of that. The other provision is the fact that people are required to get vaccinated has no bearing on other mitigation that may be required within the district. For example, our current mask mandate. As I said, as we have some more specific information, we'll provide it. Within our agency, we still have, I think, 14% of our folks who haven't reported their vaccine status, but by September 19th, we will have received that from everyone, and we will be making sure that people are either vaccinated or testing weekly in order to report to work with us. I see the question about whether we believe contractor applies. I assume that came after my very long explanation of we're working that out. And we will be able to answer that more fully in the future. We want to make absolutely certain, because as people may be aware, there are a number of agencies that contract with us as well as other agencies in the district. We want to make sure that we're all implementing the same rules for those agencies. People may have noticed I had originally expected not to return to the office until September. I'm back a little bit earlier than that, teleworking likely until that date. But if you're going easy with the questions, because I just got back, there's no need. So if people have questions, please post them. Make sure that you direct your question to everyone so that we're able to see them and we're happy to answer them. So there's a question here. I tried looking for exemption forms for the medical and religious reasons, but didn't find one. How this gets implemented in each agency would be up to that agency. So, so there is not, as part of the mayor's order, this is what the exemption form looks like. Is there a plan for people supported who refuse to get vaccinated or tested? So this requirement is for district government employees and contractors, not for people supported. People supported have a right to refuse vaccination or testing. We do have a plan in that. So, for example, I know that the number, what I think we're at, hold on one second. Like, the one area where we're having the most difficulty is people who live in natural homes, but where we're at 59%. But when we look at where those people live and compare that to sort of their neighbors, as we look at the vaccinations by ward on the coronavirus website, we're actually doing pretty well. We're doing better than otherwise in that ward. I don't want to say pretty well until we're well up above 80%. And hopefully pushing up toward 100%. I mean, this new Delta variant is scary and quite contagious from what they say. So, but at any rate, people do have a right to refuse. When we have folks, particularly in natural homes, our nurse consultants are checking in each month, providing ongoing education, and are slowly but surely making progress in chipping away at the hesitancy that people have and in providing education to folks. But at the end of the day, of course, people do have a right to refuse. And, prior to the end of December, there was no vaccine and we had folks providing services. And so what it means is, using appropriate PPE, ensuring that you maintain your health in providing supports for people. We did see, I don't remember, was it last week or the week before, we saw some videos that were produced by the USAID with folks that we support and their decision making about getting vaccinated. The one that kind of sticks with me is someone who was very hesitant, but at the end of the day decided that she wanted to leave her apartment. So she did get vaccinated. So my hope is that, as we continue consistently to be checking in, answering people's questions, that we will continue to push up on that number with the people that we support. I'm going to punt this question to Winslow, asking about recent efforts to address the low percentage of people in natural homes who've been vaccinated. They may be a similar percentage to their neighbors, but the health issues of those in natural homes are likely not the same as their neighbors. It's an assumption there. Have we brought in peers or other family members who've been vaccinated to help with outreach?
So the answer to the question about bringing in family members and peers is no. Essentially what we've done is have a questionnaire gone out to people in natural homes, and when they have expressed desire not to be vaccinated, we have, as respectfully as possible, consistently followed back up with them, noting what their hesitancy is and reminding them of the importance of the vaccine, the current data on safety of the vaccine. And we've just recently begun adding discussion about the Delta variant. So we're really approaching this very thoughtfully and respectfully. We don't want to assume that people's reluctance to this vaccine is something that we can assuage with just constant badgering, but we definitely want to be respectful of their decisions. So, I mean, I'm open to any suggestions that the community advocates or anyone else has, um, in terms of reaching out to family. I would be interested in thoughts about how that would work. Should I be calling people's relatives and saying, can you tell me who in your family's been vaccinated? And then talking to them and say, hey, talk to your cousin. We keep asking them and they're saying no. I mean, I just wonder in my own life how that would work and how I would feel about someone asking me if I wanted to be vaccinated. I'm saying no, and them going step further and talking to my family about my
I read the question, Winslow, I interpreted the question to mean, did we have family members as peers who could reach out to the families of people we support? Because the reality is, this isn't a matter of necessarily the person we support in their home being hesitant. My guess is the hesitancy is within the whole home. So have we looked at peers in terms of the people we support, but also family members as peers? Now, the challenge with that is you'd have to somehow hire them and get past, or have them as official volunteers, get past the confidentiality issues, because you can't disclose to someone, that this person receives services from us. That seems like a fairly easy one to get over. But that's how I interpreted the question.
Oh yeah, well, we have information on what's described as credible messengers. Maybe I misunderstood the question. But yeah, any thoughts that people have, this form's a nice place to talk about it. But if you could shoot me your ideas offline, that way we can.
It's in the chat.
Are those the videos from last?
No, the suggestion in the chat is that there's an article in today's post that specifically talks about outreach done by anyway, I haven't looked at today's post yet. Washington Post article today discusses this. I was suggesting hiring family members to be part of the outreach team. So rather than nurses, to be identifying family members of people who are able to connect better with family members.
Okay. We'll look into that. Thanks a lot for that recommendation.
So just to clarify, there's a question here. I want to make sure I understand the present vaccine status with the mayor's recent order. Presently, there is no vaccination requirement / weekly testing requirement for provider staff. Is that correct? I only hesitate because, to the extent it's in the mayor's order, once we have worked out exactly how it should be implemented, the mayor's order is, in effect as of this week. But yeah, that is correct. We have not at this time made a determination about all of these. There are a number of really difficult issues to work through about what it means regarding this question of, hold on one second. How you read that whole paragraph in there, in section 4B or 4.1 in the mayor's order. There's a lot of language in that really has to be parsed. And so we're working with the other agencies on parsing all that language, and we will communicate to all of our providers once we have done that. But at this time, we have not. It is true that providers, any agency, I believe, that has a contract with the district, received an email this week that just indicated the mayor's order is in place, and it gave the language from this provision of the order saying contractors are required to do this. However, as I said, there's very specific language in that paragraph. And so we have to work out what all that language means. We haven't worked it out. And as soon as we do, we will send that out to all the providers. There was also a question on status of the Appendix K, which is no update yet. We got some additional language changes, but we hope to hear at any moment. I mean, we met with CMS on July 2nd to answer their final questions and resubmitted. And so as soon as we hear, we will let people know. Any update on the ARPA funds and if providers can apply for reimbursement for vaccine incentives? Not yet. So we submitted, as people may be aware, we submitted our ARPA plan on July 12th. CMS's position now is that they will get back to states in 30-ish days. Our 30th day was yesterday. So we expect to hear at any moment. And one of the issues that needs to be resolved, which we're working with DHCF on, is that the incentive, the vaccine incentive, is not just with the waiver, but it's across a number of district agencies. And so we're working on what it will look like for all agencies and exactly how those funds will be paid. And so once we have a final answer on the ARPA funds, then we'll also be able to put out some guidance on exactly how we'll be paying. But we have regular meetings with DHCF to talk about ARPA implementation so that we hope as soon as we get the approval, we'll be ready to move forward. In the original Appendix K provision allowing DSPs to do CPR first aid refresher training online in lieu of in-person training, is that still in effect? Most of the Appendix K updates are about rates, but not other specifics. Yeah, the Appendix K is still in effect. The original Appendix K was in effect until March, and it was extended then for another year. So all the provisions of the original Appendix K would still be in place. And then we also sought some additional amendments beyond just extending it. Winslow, I saw that you popped up. I don't know if that's because you wanted to add something to that.
Just that those online provisions last up until 45 days after the end of the public health emergency. So nothing.
Which is the federal public health emergency.
Correct.
Which is still
I will also add. I will add from a QAPMA standpoint that we are urging providers to restart in-person trainings as you can. We're not forcing that. We're just asking, for the safety of our population and for, to make sure that our DSPs are up to date with the most accurate trainings. We do urge providers to do in-person if you can.
Well, I don't see any additional questions. Um, I'm in no hurry to end the meeting to like go outside or anything because it is oppressive out there. Um, we're supposedly going to have a beautiful weekend though, once some cool air gets down here. So if there are no more questions, we'll usually once we say we'll end early, we then get a couple questions. So we'll end at 12:40 if we hear nothing before then. So like I said, nice to be connecting with people again. And we will talk again next week. And my hope is that by next week we will have worked out these questions about contractors regarding vaccines, and be able to answer them by next week. But as I said, this is very, this one paragraph in here has a lot of language that can be read differently. Every agency has their own lawyers, and as we discuss this amongst the different agencies, there may be different interpretations. And so we need to make sure that we have one consistent interpretation about how this will be applied to all contractors at least within our health and human services cluster, so that where we're sharing, where contractors provide services to more than one agency, they have one consistent expectation. Am I to assume that a question, Carol, went out to um, here we go. Have we thought of provider incentives for developing creativity in service delivery? No, to be quite honest. Now, what I will say is that we do have some providers who provide their services. And within the waiver, that is what they're allowed to do. And our current waiver is up for renewal. Our comprehensive waiver is up for renewal in a little more than a year, and so we will be talking to folks about what is included in that waiver. And as I said, I think we have some providers who do currently use creativity in the provision of their services. We have some who are far more progressive, some who have really adopted more technology in their work. And so I think that our hope, of course, is that the waiver allows for that. If people have questions about how they're providing services, what's allowed, I would recommend that perhaps they talk with their quality resource specialist. Thank you very much, Carol. And I will take that as she said, welcome back. I do know even when I wasn't here, I was on the phone, except 1 week when I was tied up. And so I do recognize for people who are on the phone how important it is that we read the question and not assume that everyone can read what's in the chat. Thank you, and thank you to everyone. It's 12:43. It's almost 12:45. It seems that we've responded to all questions, and as I said, my hope is that we'll have some more specific information next week. However, as I said, we do want to make sure that we have, you know, as we said from the beginning, the new term of art, the whole of government response. We want to make sure that we have a consistent response across agencies about exactly what the meaning and how the implementation of this mayor's order will be with our partners in the community. So thanks everyone, and we will talk again next week.